Welcome to our YouTube channel. We're so glad that you found us. Please enjoy this inspiring interview with Brother James Twyman. He was interviewed by Lin Castaldo. If you would like some more information about Brother James, please visit his website at worldpeacepulse.com. For more information on our non-dual community and the free resources we provide, we invite you to visit our website at awakening-together.org. We hope you enjoy the satsang and hope to see you live in our sanctuary.
Brother James Francis Twyman is a multifaceted individual renowned for his contributions to spirituality, music, and community building. He is widely recognized for his work as an author, musician, peace activist. Namaste Village is one of his significant initiatives, embodying his vision of a harmonious and spiritual enriched community. So, James, do you want to say a few things? I know you want to start out.
Sure. Well, first, I'll just let you know where I am and who I'm with. I am here right a couple of houses away from the Awakening Together Center community here in Ajijic, Mexico, just up the hill from Namaste Village. For those of you who are not aware of this area, Ajijic, it is just a blossoming spiritual vortex. That's a good word for it, isn't it? It's a vortex. It pulls us in. And then what happens is it germinates. There are different communities, different expressions that take root. So the guy I'm sitting here, right here to my left, Jai, who is kind of the founder of the Awakening Together Center here, what happened was he had bought the community that is now the Awakening Together Center. Awakening Heart Sangha, thank you. And I came to visit him, and this was 7.5 years ago.
Yes.
7.5 years ago. I walked down the street and wanted to see this B&B that I tried to buy about 3 years before that. But the gentleman who owned it wasn't ready to sell. Turned out he had passed away, and now that's turned into Namaste Village, and there are other beautiful communities all around. So, and Yogananda, you may have heard, was here 100 years ago, and he prophesied that one day this area would be a major site of spiritual awakening. So it's wonderful to share this vortex with you. It's wonderful just to be able to be here and just to share for a little while about this non-dual experience and the awakening that's happening everywhere and within each one of us.
Beautiful. Do you want to open us with the song?
Yeah,
and prayer? Or?
I have my little instrument here, my Venezuelan cuatro. You mentioned that I am a brother and an Episcopal priest within the Franciscan order. I've always been in love with St. Francis because of his uncompromising energy and commitment. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot here today, is the uncompromising decision to awaken, to be the source, to be the beloved. We could say it in 1,000 different ways, but it all means the same thing. And so I've always loved Francis for that commitment, for that non-dual spirit that he had. And that, of course, has taken root in different ways with different people. One person that many of you probably know would be Richard Rohr, another great Franciscan in Albuquerque, who is one of the great non-dual voices in the world today. And so I thought that I would share the traditional prayer of St. Francis, but I want you to listen to it in a new way, to see if you can catch that non-dual experience that's at the core of this prayer. So this is the prayer of St. Francis. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. injury, pardon where there is doubt, your faith, and where there is despair, your hope, where there is darkness, I will be your light. And where there is sadness, your joy. O divine Master, grant that we may not seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. We are now your instruments, beloved. For it is in giving that we receive, in pardoning that we are pardoned, and in dying to ourselves that we live. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace, of your peace. So, it is in
Thank
giving
you.
that we receive, loving that we are loved.
Yeah.
Oh, if any of us could put it more clear than that, because there's only one of us here, right? So that which I give to thee is received by me. That's what I like to say. It's an easy way to remember it. Therefore, the only thing we're here to do is to be the source, to be the source of whatever it is we think we need or don't have or require, to give it away, because we're only giving it to ourselves, right? And so there's a beautiful prayer that I also put to music, 25 years ago, that was written by Mother Teresa. And she put this so beautifully. What she did was she took the prayer of St. Francis, and the center and the heart of that, it is in giving that we receive. And she wrote a prayer called the Servant Prayer. And the beginning of it goes like this: when I'm hungry, give me someone that I can feed. When I'm thirsty, give me someone that I can give a drink to. When I'm cold, give me someone to keep warm. On and on it goes in this way. Because someone like Mother Teresa, who was fully awake because she saw in her experience, she saw the face of Christ in the least of her brothers and sisters who were suffering and starving on the streets of Calcutta. But she didn't see people starving on the streets of Calcutta. She saw the Christ. Now, when I say that, it might be a little confusing, because some people will say, well, was she seeing the face of Jesus? Was she seeing the face of the Christ? Is it different? Is it different? And the answer is yes and no, as so many of these things are. Because when we're focused on the seeing the Christ in one another, seeing the light, the love, the holiness, the grace within each other, it's essentially that same grace, that same Christ that Jesus awoke within, that Jesus woke up within. And it's the same Christ that we are called to awaken within. This is not a Christian thing or a Jewish thing or a Muslim or any. This is beyond religion. This is the awakening. And so we can use whatever words we want to use, but it's awakening in that. And the way that we do that is by giving it away, by seeing it in everyone, especially in those that it may be hardest to see it in. It could be a poor person starving on the street, like with Mother Teresa, or it could be a king or a queen. Now, the interesting thing about that is, of course, we always have the egoic ear and we have the Christ ear. And we're going to hear a truth like that from either perspective. So if I were to say that it's all the same, that we are all the same in Christ, the ego hears that and says, it points to the lowest common denominator, like a starving person on the street, a drug addict, whatever it may be. It says, you mean we're the same as that? But the Spirit looks at it and says, it looks at the Christ and says, no, we're all the same as that. And that's the reality, that's the experience. We can call that the non-dual experience, where all of the duality just collapses in, and we have an experience of which we cannot speak because there are no words. It's beyond words, beyond concepts. So anyway, that's, I guess, a good beginning, but I don't want to just keep going here. I would love to see, Lynn, if you have any questions or anything, a direction that you'd like to take this.
I actually do. Now that you brought up the song and two of my favorite people, St. Francis and Mother Teresa, but you're also referred to as the Peace Troubadour. But your beginning wasn't so peaceful. And I know a lot of people suffer from trauma. So I thought if you would be so kind to just explain what happened with your wife, Linda.
Sure. Well, where do I begin? This was not really the, well, I'll back up even further and talk about before the Peace Troubadour thing started. So I, as many of us, have always felt that call, that pull, that urge of spirit to dive deep. And I got married very young. We had our daughter Angela when we were 23, and because I always felt this call, this longing for that experience, I was having a hard time finding how I would fit this into being married, a father, and a householder. And in the midst of this, we had moved from Chicago to Oregon. I don't know how many of you remember Ken Keyes. He was one of the great personal growth leaders in the 70s, and he had a college in Coos Bay, Oregon. So we moved there, and while we were there, we separated, Linda and I. But within about a week, I realized that wasn't the right choice. I wanted to nurture our family, and basically, I spent the next 17 years trying to win Linda back. And by then I'd written a number of books. I had traveled the world, and yet Linda and I were always best friends, always extremely close. And she was always so supportive of everything I was doing around the world. And finally, I was living in Ashland, Oregon. Our daughter was with me there in Oregon. She was still in Chicago, Linda. And she made the decision that she was going to move out to Oregon and be with our daughter, but also for the first time in all of those years, see what we could do together in our relationship, see if we could reignite that. And of course, after 17 years of hoping that this would happen someday, I was very excited. And plans were being made. And then a short while before Linda was to move out to Oregon, two men entered her apartment and ended her life. We still don't know who or why or any details. No one's ever been arrested. But in the midst of traveling around the world doing peace work, often in areas of the world that that were in great conflict or even war. You know, I was invited, for example, by Saddam Hussein to perform the peace concert in Iraq at the same time that the United States and its allies were beginning the ramp up to another war. I was able to perform the concert there. A week later, I was invited by the government of Northern Ireland to sing the prayer of St. Francis at Stormont Castle while peace negotiations were going on. And so doing this work and then to be confronted with something, well, I'll say so real, because that is the experience. You can't spiritual your way around something like that. You have to dive right into it. Anyone who has had the experience of grief in their own life knows that. You can't say something like, oh, it's not real, death is not real, and try and go around it.
Actually, I heard you talk about your friend and the wisdom that he imparted, Donald Walsh.
Neil, yeah.
If you would share that wisdom
Sure.
that he gave you at the funeral.
Well, Neil has been a very dear friend of mine for many years. Obviously, you probably know him as the author of the Conversations with God series. And so Neil came and joined me in Chicago and was with me throughout that whole experience. And it was at Linda's funeral. It was at the Unity Church in Chicago. And, people don't tend to know what to say or how to react in a situation like that. And so someone came up to me and said, when you get over this, blah, blah, blah. Well, it took a lot to take a deep breath. And I said, this is not the kind of thing you get over. And Neil was standing there and he said, that's right. You'll never get over this, but there will come a day where it's no longer over you. And anyone who has gone through grief can probably relate to that, because for me in that situation, it was, years of like feeling a dark cloud over the top of your life. Like I'm from Portland, Oregon. And so it's like Portland, Oregon in the wintertime, there's always a cloud, whether it's raining or not. And then after a while, after months of winter, suddenly that cloud begins to part. And even though you'll always miss that person, it's no longer, the weight of it is no longer over the top of you. So I remember in that situation, I was wrestling with all of this, even after having been a student and a teacher of A Course in Miracles for many years, after having written many books and traveling the world. It becomes very real suddenly. It's no longer a concept. We can say death is not real. In the Manual for Teachers, it says, Teacher of God, your one role can be summed up in this way: teach that there is no death. And that's true. There is no death. This is not a real world. That's true. There's only one thing that's happening. And yet, at the same time, we can't come into the experience of that by going around and say, well, I'm not going to deal with this because it's not a real world anyway. That's not going to help. In fact, I'd love to share something that I actually put on Facebook a couple of days, and I'll share something that a comment someone made. Oh, let me see if I can get back to it. It bounced me out. I don't have internet here, but hopefully the phone signal will pull it up.
All right. Well, you're trying to do that. You wrote a book after her death, The Barn Dance,
Yes.
Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth.
There is a place where the magic never ends.
That was one of the books.
Well, I would say, when people ask me, what book should I read of yours? I mean, I could give a very spiritual book like the Moses Code or the Master Teacher Within. But I would say that particular book, The Barn Dance, is my personal favorite because it was my journey out of the grief that I was feeling. It was so real. At that time, I was living in Portland. I had a house that had been built during Prohibition. And so there was a secret room in this house. You had to know which book to push on the bookshelf. And then the bookshelf would open into this little tiny secret room where during Prohibition, they made wine. And there were actually 3 houses in a row that had the same secret room. They had a tunnel connecting. It was very cool. And so I actually just I went in and closed that door and just wrote for 2 weeks. And that was my healing, writing that. So let me read this. This is what I put on Facebook a couple of days ago. And once again, this is all about, on one hand, realizing everything that we have learned and taught and shared, that the world as we perceive it, the world of separation, is not a real thing. Even I, as I perceive myself, am not real. The identity that I've chosen to inhabit is more like a costume or a role or an avatar. And yet, in the United States right now, there is a lot going on. And we can just bury our head in the sand and say, well, it's not real. Or we can listen to the guidance within and say, how do I respond to this lovingly? Not what do I do, but how do I respond? Now, Spirit may give us something to do, or it may be just practicing these things ourselves and sharing them in whatever way we can. Because I've been an activist most of my life, a lot of what I'm always, and as a Franciscan, I'm always feeling, well, how can I extend this love that I know into this situation, say with the immigrants in the United States? So this is what I wrote. At the top, it says, his words, not mine. Okay? Any country that prioritizes its national agenda over the gospel call to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, and welcome the stranger cannot call itself a Christian nation. Likewise, claiming to be a Christian while doing the opposite of what Jesus asked is like calling yourself a lifeguard but letting a struggling swimmer drown, or claiming to be a vegan but eating steak at every meal. It just doesn't make sense. So I went ahead and put that, I want to see, the other one. So the first comment, I won't say who this is, of course, but wait, where is it? I just loved the first comment that, there it is. It says, according to ACIM, my perception of this indicates my belief that something other than love exists. Yes. And it is my mind that needs healing. Mm-hmm. Did the color of my picture change, or is it just on my computer? Okay, good.
No, it looks the same.
Okay, once again, according to A Course in Miracles, my perception of this, what I wrote, indicates my belief that something other than love exists. And it is my mind that needs healing. First of all, I'll say what she shared is absolutely true. And yet, once again, this truth needs to invade my perceptual proclamation that who I claim to be is real. It has to overwhelm that before I can realize that truth. And just pushing it to the side and saying, that's not real, we're giving lip service. So this is always about the experience. And so the experience of what, you might ask? Well, the experience of one, the experience of non-dual reality. I mean, we could say a lot of things, but none of them make any sense because words are symbols of symbols, as we know. They're twice removed from the truth. So the words are never going to get us there. In fact, I have a little trick, and some of you have seen this, but I love doing this because it's the quickest way to understand non-duality. So here's what I want you all to do. I want you to take your index finger like this and put it right in, I'm going to do it this side, right in front of you about a foot, okay? And look at your finger. Jai, how many fingers do you see when you look straight at it? One. You see one, because you only have one finger up, right? Now what I want you to do is to look through your finger to the other side of the room. How many fingers do you see now? 2. There's one here, there's one there. Now bring your focus back to the finger, and that which appeared as 2 several seconds ago, you realize it was always 1. There was never 2 fingers. There was only 1 finger the entire time. I've always just thought that's a simple, funny little way for us to understand that the non-dual or the unified experience is simply what is, but we're not going to be able to understand that as long as we're looking through to the other side. Our focus has to come back to the finger, which is what initiates the experience of which we cannot speak. And when we're in that experience, then what that wonderful woman shared becomes a lived reality, not just words or lip service. Does that make sense, Lynn?
Yeah, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, that's accepting the atonement for yourself, as they say in the Course in Miracles. We can't control outside ourselves, but we can control our feelings and what we think.
Absolutely.
And
Well, we were talking about this right before we started this Zoom call, that we're all pretty clear that the only one who needs to get this is me. As soon as I think, oh, Jet needs this, Jet needs to get this, it's me who has erred, not Jet. I'm sure you've all heard the thing, when you point your one finger at someone, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. It's true. But
yeah, right.
if I remember that the only one who really needs to get this is me, first of all, the humility of that is magic. Humility is the key. As long as I think that I'm the great teacher and these people need to hear my great wisdom in order to get this, I'm the one who is lost. This is one of the reasons why I have always loved St. Francis and have always been drawn to the Franciscan path, because it is a path of humility. And so often I've known most of the very well-known New Thought non-dual teachers in the world. And many of them, I would say, are wonderful examples and teachers for me of how not to be. How not to be a teacher of God. And some of them are wonderful examples and teachers of how to do that, of what that really means. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I remember I was doing an event in Fort Collins, Colorado. It was a monthly event, and they would always bring in a different speaker. And it was in a big, huge theater, 700 or 800 people. It was wonderful. And the woman, I remember her name, who sponsored it, her name was Donna Vasaki. And she and her husband took me and a friend of mine who was visiting from Australia, took us out to dinner the night before. And we just had a wonderful time. And that night of the talk, about halfway in, we took a break. And Bob, who was Donna's husband, went to my friend Aurora and said, I can't believe it. He's the exact same person on stage as he was at dinner last night. That's probably the best compliment I've ever gotten in my entire life, because it means that it's not two different things going on, 2 different people. And for me, especially being here in a place like Namaste Village and Ajijic, and being in an environment where if I was that type, I could very easily generate that sort of cultish guru energy. But I don't feel that that's helpful. What I find to be most helpful is when we're right together. So when people say, what do I call you? Father, brother, I would, given those 2, I would say, call me brother, because a brother is right here with you, right? Father tends to be someone who we look up to, and I'm not one to look up to, but I am one to stand with. And so if I remember that I'm only here teaching myself, the only one who needs to get this is me, then it's very easy for me to stand with anyone and reflect that Christhood and to see that in them, which allows me to see it in myself.
So since you brought that up, that was going to be one of my questions towards the end, but I'll ask it now. What made you decide to become the Episcopalian priest?
Good
And how do
question.
you, and how do you reconcile the differences and the challenges, like, for instance, your belief on death?
Right. Okay. So I'll back up and I'll talk first about a friend of mine who is no longer in bodily form, but we were Course in Miracles students together back in the early 90s, and his name was David. He was from Boston, and like me, David had been a Franciscan, and then he left and he became a student of the Course. And yet he would still go to Mass on Sunday. And people would ask him, how can you be doing Course in Miracles and go to a Catholic church? And David would say in his very thick Boston accent, I know she's a whore, but she's my mother. And I always kind of related to that. In many ways, the church is my mother. Now, my own mother, God rest her soul, I adore my mother, but I didn't agree with her very often. We had very different perspectives on most things, but that didn't change my love for her. She was my mother. So when I was 18, of course, I was raised in a very Catholic family, and that was my whole spiritual reality. And so from the time I was very young, I knew I wanted to be a priest. Because I loved St. Francis, I wanted to be a Franciscan. So at 18, I left and joined the Franciscan order. I was only there for about 2 years, but still that energy stayed with me. Of course, then I became a student of the Course and began to explore much, much more deeply. But something in me, and once again, you can't question the guidance because sometimes the guidance may not make sense. If you're feeling the guidance, well, I want you to take this, what you've been experiencing and sharing, and I want you to take it back there and teach it in the same way, just use different words. And that's actually what it was. It was a strong guidance that it was time for me to take this non-dual experience, much like Richard Rohr does, and bring it into a context that is much more rigid, much more solid, and needs to be dissolved. And so that's what I began to do, and it's been miraculous. I'll tell you another quick story. I remember when I first became a student of the Course. I was about 31. No, I was 29. And I was so into it and I was so on fire with it. And I thought, okay, of all the priests, Catholic priests that I know, there's only one that I thought would be open to it, and his name was Father Pius. He was my first director when I was in the order. And I wanted to call him up and I wanted to tell him all about A Course in Miracles. So I called him. And I said, Pius, I need to tell you about a book that I've been reading. He said, okay, but first I need to tell you about a book that I've been reading. I said, okay, you go first. He said, well, I found this book and I've been reading it. And he said, to me, this is the true, authentic teaching of Jesus. So I've been actually reading it during my sermon, little sections of it. And I put a paper cover so that nobody would know what the book was. And afterwards, everyone will come up and say, oh, that was amazing. What was the book that you were reading from? And he said, I won't tell them because I know they'll judge it then. So I said, Pius, you got to tell me. He said, it's a book called A Course in Miracles.
Uh-huh.
I said, guess what I was about to tell you about? So once again, we can judge and say, well, this is a non-dual container and this is a dualistic container. But who is it that falls into the duality? It's me. the most the most dualistic thing we can do is judge what is non-dual and what isn't, right? If we choose to see everything as one, it doesn't matter where we are. I could be in a synagogue. I could be in a cave. I could be in a Catholic or an Episcopal church. It doesn't matter, because the experience is the experience. Does that make sense?
Mhm. I've always felt like the universal for everything is love. So if we focus on that true love, not an egotistical love, that brings us all together.
Absolutely. It's all love. I mean, what does the Course say? God, uh, my brain's gone. Only love is real. God is love, and therefore so am I. I mean, God is love, and therefore so am I. In other words, I am one with God. I am in God. And that is the only reality that I need. And I found myself, we all find ourselves in this moment living in a world where I have this vehicle that I use to negotiate through time and space. But I know, at least intellectually, that this is not who I really am. And I have holy instances of that full realization. And after time, those realizations start to become like the beads on a rosary, and they start to string together until they finally just become one experience. So,
Beautiful.
yes, thank you.
Beautiful. I'd like to open it up if anybody else has any questions that they'd like to ask.
Or here, if anyone has a question, you can come and ask it on the
Yes,
camera.
sure.
Don't
They
be
get to
shy.
see you every day at Namaste Village.
Actually, not.
Actually,
There's only one guy here who sees me every day. The rest see me once in a while.
oh, okay. I wanted to, before we go into Namaste, I wanted to actually bring up, you do the ACI. Oh, Tina, let's take Tina's question first.
It's something I would never say at Awakening Together, but because you mentioned Richard Rohr, who I'm a huge fan, kind of started me on this. He has a video about, a new way of looking at the Trinity, which I find amazing. And I just wondered, what are your views? Even though there's oneness there, since you are still a priest as well, how do you put together the Trinity? Like, how do you see that?
Good question. And of course, theologians and philosophers have been arguing about that for 2,000 years, trying to define the undefinable, right? And they'll come up with all sorts of analogies. Well, it's like a three-leaf clover. They're three parts, but they're all connected, and that's a good way to look at it. I think one of the things that Richard might say is that the Trinity is a dance. And it's a dance of one. Just as we are dancing here together, and it seems like we are separate, it seems like we're unique, but we're dancing in this experience of oneness. So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the Creator, the Redeemer, the Sanctifier, whatever words you want to use, if you want to do non-sexist language. The point is that there is only one. And if we start to begin to split it off, even in something as beautiful as the Trinity, trying to understand the three natures of God, there's only one nature of God, and that's love. And that's what pulls those three aspects of that love together. So this brings us back to what we started with, which is we have to be uncompromising with this. Being uncompromising with that, with only love is real, is the pathway into the experience. So what does that mean? What does that look like? It looks like if I'm watching the news and I see that there are thousands of of Mexican immigrants who are either being denied entry or loaded up in trucks, put into jail, and then shipped away. If I look at that and I begin to feel the energy moving inside me, other than love, I have to pause. And I have to begin by realizing there is no good, there is no bad here. This is simply what is happening. And my response to that is love. Now, that loving response may be to go to the border, or it may be to, let's say I was a priest at a church and ICE is coming in to try and take the people. And maybe in that moment, the guidance is to stand firm. I don't know, and I don't have to know. All I have to know is that only love is real. And if I'm judging anything out here other than as love, then it's me who has fallen into error. And this is where the mind training and the mind correction has to come. So taking it back to your question about the Trinity, there's only one, and we can try and separate it and understand it all we want, but the only thing that we need to understand is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They're just different aspects of love. I hope that helped, Tina. Thank you.
Since we're talking about love, you have a musical called Love Is. I don't know how long ago that was, but the song is still current too. And you put the ACIM lessons to music, and I think
Many
you can
times.
get many times, and I think you can get that on the on YouTube still.
Yeah, that started about six years ago now. It was the 50th anniversary of when Helen first heard the voice. And at that time, wait, what did I say? No, it was more like 10 years ago. Whatever. So I decided I was going to write a song for all 365 lessons and then read the lesson, which I did. And it just became this extraordinary experience. And I just finished another one where I put all of the lessons to dance music. That was really fun. So if you were to go to YouTube and just type in ACIM World Dance, many of them will come up, or ACIM Music and my name. A lot of them will come up.
So another thing that you did that I thought was interesting, I have two things that I'm thinking of. So I'm going to go with the Moses Code first. You know, they talk about Matrix here a lot, the Matrix movie, and you call it the Moses Code Matrix. So do you want to explain how you had the book hidden and how you found it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm a weirdo. I admit it. I'm pretty far out there, and I do a lot of strange things. One thing that most people here know is that ever since I've been a kid, I've been a magician. I do magic shows, and I've done several of them here in Ajijic with music, and I'm actually in the process, for those of you who live here, I'm putting together a Beatles magic show, which is going to be in a theater here probably in May. And so when I was 18, I can remember so vividly the feeling of somehow, one way or another, getting 20 bucks together and getting on my bike and riding about 3 miles to get to the local magic store. And being in that magic store, and I've got only this little bit of money, so finding something, having the guy behind the counter guide me into something. So I remember when I was 18, 18, I bought a little booklet called Hellstromism. What a name, right? Hellstromism. It was written by a magician in the early part of the 20th century named Alex Hellstrom. And it was basically, the idea was like I could have someone hide this or any other object anywhere in this house. And by them thinking about where it is and just holding onto my wrist, I can walk right to it. So it's a form of mind reading. Now, when I got that booklet, it explained it as a magic trick. And so I got very good doing it as a magic trick. I would freak people out in college, and it was a lot of fun. But as I began to open more spiritually, and this awakening began to take root, I realized I didn't need the physical contact anymore. In other words, I didn't need the trick. So there was actually a book coming out that I was writing called The Proof. And I was with Hay House at that time. And Reed Tracy, I actually sat down in a meeting with Reed Tracy and Louise Hay. And we're talking about this book and how they wanted to get it, how to do it. And I said, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to do a fun experiment to prove that we are one, that we are one mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick someone, it could be anyone. We're going to give that person $1,000 and a book. And they can travel anywhere in the entire United States and hide that book anywhere. It just has to be hidden in a place that I or someone can get to. In other words, not in a safe, and to get to legally. And they can't tell anyone. They can't tell anyone where they're going and where it's hidden. So we had this whole process. By the way, this whole thing, if you were to go to YouTube and type in The Proof, James Twyman, this video of me doing this comes up. So what happened was we found the person that we thought would be good. She went off. I had no idea where she went. She came back, and just tuning into each other, I felt a very strong pull towards Seattle. Got onto an airplane with the film crew, not even knowing at that time that it was definitely in Seattle. I just felt that it probably was. Went to Seattle. I think within 2 hours of being in Seattle, I found the book hidden in a bush there in Seattle. So it was just a fun, weird way of showing that we are one mind. And it's just funny that something that started off as a magic trick evolved in something that was very real. Jet, did I ever do that to you? I think,
Right.
did I ever do that to you with the hide something? I feel like I have. Okay, I'll do it tomorrow.
Which I think, helped you develop into that master teacher within. I really enjoyed that book. So I have a lot of this from AI. I know Sophia is a friend of yours in AI, but it's amazing what AI brought up. So I'm just going to read what AI said. It says,
Oh, boy.
imagine asking a question. This is about the Master Teacher Within book. Imagine asking a question, then without warning, falling into a deep state of unconsciousness. Minutes later, you open your eyes and find the complete answer written out on your computer screen. And this is what you experience. Tell us more.
Yes. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to pull that up in my phone real quick, and we'll do a little experiment. Yes, that is exactly what happened. I have this experience where it began by feeling a presence. I like that word presence because it's so intimate, and a question came into my mind. For example, this is one of the questions. It's clear that we have to completely abandon the lower self in order to reclaim the dominance of the higher self. Are there any suggestions that you can make that will enable this to occur? So I typed that out, and then I just, like an Edgar Cayce kind of experience, I just went out. And I think it was only usually for a few minutes, but I was totally unconscious. And then when I would open my eyes again, this is what would be on the screen. Everything you need to lift above the restraints of the world you created in your imagination can be found in this statement. I totally abandon me to fully receive thee. I totally abandon me to fully receive thee. This will feel like death until you finally accept that the me you've claimed until now is nothing, while the love contained within thee, or God, is everything. Everything you could ever want or need rests in your acceptance of the source of all love, that which created and maintains the entire universe. So don't hesitate. Don't wait for another answer. None will come. Your willingness to abandon your senseless preoccupation with your split mind and the life you think you live is all that you need to receive the light of God that never fades and could never be extinguished. It goes on from there, but that's a good example of the experience. Now, what was that? Was that channeling? Was that some other entity that was suddenly entered? No, it wasn't that at all. When Helen Schuckman began to hear the voice that she then scribed in order to bring about A Course in Miracles, was that ultimately something different than Helen? Well, considering there's no such thing as a Helen, no such thing as a James, maybe. But the point is that it's all within us now. It's all, so we're not channeling anything but love. We're not channeling anything but the truth. So when I would go out, I just tend to be over dramatic, I think. I don't think I needed to go unconscious, but that's just how it happened in that moment. But the wisdom was within me already, just as the wisdom is within each one of you right now. And we can play games with us, oh, it's channeling this entity or this ascended being. Ultimately, that doesn't mean anything. Ultimately, that's just another form of separation, because we're putting something or someone else out there above and beyond us instead of saying it's here right now in me, as me, not the me, not Jimmy or James Francis, but thee. I think, that was a beautiful example of that.
There's a question which I think kind of goes right along with that. They said I guess they were listening to a program before this, and he was not seeing the love in our national administration. So, and he vocalized it. He said, "How can I see that as one?"
Ooh, you want to go there, huh? Okay. All right. Fasten your seatbelt. We can talk about that. All right. So, to be honest, this has been one of the great lessons for me as well. To see what's happening and to not react with fear, with anger, whatever, but to stay in that experience of love, knowing that it is only through that experience that I can be totally helpful. Okay? I am here only to be, it's not totally helpful. What's the word truly helpful. I'm here only to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent the one who sent me. I don't have to know what to say or what to do, because the one who sent me will guide me. So I can't be truly helpful unless I'm able to look through, not at, say, Trump or what's happening, but through that to what's really happening and give all of my energy to that. This is where the healing can take place, and this is when I can be truly helpful. Now, we could be here in Mexico, you could be wherever any of you are, and you could be doing that, and it would be exactly what's required. The guidance may also be to do something. It probably won't be, but it could be to do something to actually amplify that love. But I really like that thing I just said a moment ago, which is that it's not about seeing or looking at, it's about looking through. So if I look at Donald Trump, it's going to drive me freaking crazy. I'm going to have all sorts of judgment. I'm going to have all sorts of worry, concern, anger. That's what happens when I look to the person and what's happening. But if I can look through that and see the face of Christ even there, now I can be truly helpful. So it may be the hardest thing we ever do, but it also may be the truest thing we ever do. Oh, I see the little
That's
hearts.
beautiful.
Thank you, Jill.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes. Thank you. So another thing that you did was you isolated yourself. You kind of like cloistered and became a hermit. Um, share
Well, you've
that
done your
experience.
research, haven't you?
You know what? I've been following you for a while, so I do. But I'm telling you, all this AI just gave me this beautiful outline.
That's funny. Yeah, it was at the beginning of COVID. Everyone here has been down to Namaste Village, so they know that I actually built a little enclosure, which is called an anchor hold. So there is a tradition in Europe that's no longer prevalent, but especially back in the medieval times, there was a tradition called the anchorite, if it was a man, or an anchoress, if it was a woman. This was very prevalent in England. A form of being a hermit. What would happen is someone would dedicate their life to contemplation and prayer, and they would build a small enclosure onto a church, and there'd be a hole in the wall where they could look into the church, and there would also be another hole where people could bring food or anything that they needed, or even come for spiritual advice. But once someone entered into the anchor hold, they would never leave again for the rest of their life. That was the commitment that an anchorite or an anchoress made. Now, the most well-known anchoress is Julian of Norwich. You can check her out. She's very, very well known. And Julian of Norwich was actually the first woman to actually write and have a book published in the language of English. Okay, here she is in this enclosure, and she begins to. Oh, someone just asked me about tattoos. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. She's in this enclosure, in this experience. Talk about an experience. And by the way, this was at the same time as the Great Plague. So people are dying all around her. Like, I think a quarter to half of Europe died from the plague. And early on, she did have the plague and recovered. And here she is in this anchor hold with everything that's going on around her. And her most famous quote is, "All is well, and all is well, and all manner of things shall be well." Now that's the non-dual experience. Once again, not looking at, but looking through. Not looking at what seems to be happening, but looking through to the Christ, to reality. So, yes. Oh, so what I did was I decided, it was in the beginning of COVID, that I was going to be an anchorite for only a year. So we have this little enclosure done. Had this beautiful painting of Julian of Norwich done on it, and I entered in. We had this little ceremony where I began. But I only lasted 6 months. After 6 months, I said, okay, that's enough. And I came out.
That was pretty long, though. That was 6 months is a long time too.
Yeah, I
So,
figured I had to do it at least 6 months, I thought.
and you did. Wonderful. Yes, I love that quote, all is well. But why don't you answer the question about the tattoo?
Okay, so what was the action that you were just asking about the different tattoos?
He says, I'm curious what the tattoos on your arm say.
Okay, well, there are a few of them. So we'll start with this one right here. You can probably remember, you know what this is from? No love but God's. Okay, and so when I was first recording the music for the course, for the workbook, we also made a documentary called A Chorus in Miracles. Okay, chorus like a choir, a chorus in miracles. So most of it was musicians and people who were doing really creative things with the lessons from the course. And so getting this tattoo was actually a scene in that movie where I was getting the tattoo while someone else was spray painting that whole thing onto a huge wall. So here I'm getting a tattoo. He's doing this beautiful spray paint of that right as the police arrive, and we had to talk ourselves out of being arrested. So that was fun. Now this one here, I guess it's probably reversed on your screen, but it says Solo tu ed io, which is Italian and means only you and I. My daughter has the same tattoo on her arm. We wanted to get a tattoo to honor her mom, Linda. And it had a double meaning for us because when I first met Linda in 1984, one of the songs that was big at that time was a song by Crystal Gale and Eddie Rabbitt. I'm sure some of you know it. Just you and I, just you and I. And that was our song. And so I thought, well, it's beautiful. We'll make it in Italian. So it has my connection to Linda, but now it's just my daughter and I. So it had another connection with that. All right. And then here, you asked, you're getting it. Amor fati, which is Latin, which is often translated as I love it, is actually the actual translation is loving fate, right? But this is a Stoic statement. The Stoics, as you probably know, was a philosophy in Rome and ancient Greece. And the whole point, and the reason I put them on my hands so that if my hands are folded and I'm going through a challenge, I can look down and see it and remind myself to wrap my arms around whatever challenge is in front of me and give it all of my love. That's what the Stoics would say.
Yeah.
And it's not about just love it. It's give all of your love to that challenge, because every challenge is really just fuel for the awakening. Everything
Yeah.
that happens to us is fuel. And if we use it for fuel, as fuel to wake up, then there is no challenge, really. There is only God, love, light. And there are more, but okay, I'll show you one more. This is my tattoo of the Blessed Mother. In my entire life, doing hundreds and hundreds of interviews, that is the first time I've ever been asked about the tattoos.
So thank you, Joe. It was interesting. Very, thanks for the explanations. Awesome. Okay, so before we have like 15 minutes or so, what I also wanted to just give a shout out for is Namaste Village. And I heard that you might be going to Italy.
Yes.
Are you planning?
Every year, I bring a group to Assisi for a retreat. And this year, I'm going to be bringing a group. And sometimes we will do what's called the Camino of St. Francis, which is a 110-mile walk to get to Assisi. Or maybe we'll be on a bus and go to different places. But what I really like to do are retreats where we stay in Assisi the entire time and just go deep, both into the spirituality of Francis and also St. Clare, who most people don't realize the feminine counterpart of Francis, just as important, just as dynamic and impactful as Francis was. So there are actually a couple of spaces left. Usually it fills up very fast, but if anyone is interested, you can send an email to Sacred Assisi. I think it's just Sacred Assisi. Let me just look. At gmail.com. Let me just take Sacred Assisi, ASSISI, at gmail.com. And I'll send you a brochure on it.
Do you want to give us the dates? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, it's September 2nd to September 10th. Yeah, anyone who's ever been to Assisi knows it is such a beautiful, beautiful place. Yeah, Sacred Assisi at Gmail. Thanks, Melissa.
And I understand you have a couple of retreats coming up too. Do you want to share that, or are they full? You and Vicky were working on something.
So have you ever had Vicky Poppy on this? She would be a wonderful person. Vicky has been like my co-teacher for many, many years now. She is just amazing. She's with us every day at Namaste Village, which I should say, at Namaste Village, every morning, well, Monday through Friday at 9:00, we have what we call our morning session, which is me, Vicky, and others sometimes who just share as we're doing here. We just open up and let that divine spirit flow. And no one does that better than Vicky, in my mind. And and you could always, the best way to find out about it is to go to YouTube. And if you were to type in Namaste Village morning session, they'll all come up. And the link, if you ever want to go and join us live on Zoom, the link is always in the description. So just go to Namaste Village morning session on YouTube. And we put them up there every single day. It's just such a wonderful way to begin the day. We have about 50 people who live at Namaste Village. When I first bought the original property, there were 11 tiny apartments. Within 20 or 2.5 years, there were 40 apartments or houses, and now there's about 45. So it grew very fast. It's, and the same here with Jai and what's happening up the hill here. People are they're feeling that vortex and being pulled into this area, because as Yogananda felt even 100 years ago, there was something happening here. And you're always welcome. We don't always have a place at Namaste these days because there's a long waiting list, but we can always set you up at a hotel around the corner or up here at the villa. But for the website, you can go to namaste-village.com.
I think hopefully Sean will get that typed in. Thank you.
Any other questions before we go?
Yeah, any other questions?
Or comments? If anyone has a comment they'd like to make, please feel free.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Thank you, Lynn, and wonderful job, Lynn. Appreciate what you're doing. And thank you, James. I just want to express my gratitude to you, but when the prompt came in to ask him about his tattoos, that's a silly question. That is but I'll just type it in there. And the one on your arm about you and your daughter is your connection with your daughter is just so moving. But for apparently the prompt came for me to ask because of the one on your hand that says amore fate. Is that right?
Yes.
Loving fate.
Yeah.
Loving fate. That's just melting me inside. It's like, and the way you went into that about embracing it, what is right now, and recognizing that. So thank you for answering that silly question. And
Luckily, there are no silly questions.
And sharing yourself with us. I appreciate it, James. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And the one thing I'll say to any of you who might be thinking about getting a tattoo, be careful, because they are addictive. After you get one, it's kind of hard to stop, as you can see. I even have one. There's
That's
one on my
the one.
head.
Yes. What does that say?
It says peace.
Ah, okay. And that's what I was hoping that, and I feel like we have accomplished. I just feel you're such a good example of the peace. And I was wondering, do you feel comfortable just like maybe doing a brief meditation on peace?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We just all settle in here, and we'll see what comes through. I think so much of this is about just staying simple. We don't need to be complex or find the long way around. So I'm going to start the meditation with just a little bit of this song. Stay simple, stay humble, and stay awake with me. I've heard you calling, and I have answered with everything that you need. with everything that you need. Be like the birds of the air, the flowers in the field. For only then will your heart be healed, be healed. Just stay simple and stay humble, stay awake with me. There is an answer so deep within you. This truth alone will set you free. This truth alone will set you free. Stay simple and stay humble. So just take a deep breath. And let everything that you've heard or that we shared here today dissolve into these simple words. Only love is real. And I am that. Just feel those words. Only love is real, and I am that love. There's nothing you need to become that or to learn that or to change. I am that right now. And today, in this moment, we all together make the decision to give that away, to see that in others, to let that be the gift that we share. Because it is in giving that we receive. It is in loving that we are loved. So we let this simple, obvious truth be true. And in living within this truth, we realize in the beautiful words of Julian of Norwich, all is well, and all is well, and all manner of things shall be well. Amen. So thank you, everyone. This has been a real pleasure. It's so nice. I can't turn the, well, I can maybe turn the camera around. I can maybe give you a quick view of the room and a few of the other people who are joining with us here. It's nice to have a live group as well as a virtual as well. So, Lynn, thank you so much for helping to keep this focused.
I was wondering if anybody else has any last minute questions or comments. Go ahead, Melissa.
I just want to say thank you for making me see that. Thank you. Thank you for seeing the oneness. There's one dance, the Trinity, the one dance, and everything else is oneness. For the next 4 years, I'll be looking through for the oneness.
It's right here. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for us to remember that love and to inspire that love in everything that we do. And you're such a good example of that. So I thank you. Is there any parting words that you'd like to share? Any words of wisdom that you would leave us with?
You mentioned a song that I recorded that you can find on YouTube called God Is. I do like that song very much. And it's actually the beginning of a quote from St. Francis. So maybe we'll end with the whole quote, because he says, God is, And that's enough for me.
Mhm.
That's enough for me. And maybe it's enough for all of us to know that God or love is.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Definitely beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to share on Namaste Village? Or are you booked? I thought you were actually trying to open up another Namaste Village in Italy.
There was that possibility last year. I had to let it go for different reasons, but you never know, it could happen in the future. It would be a lovely place to have a small community that people could come and join.
You are love. Oh, that's beautiful. Audrey just put that up. Any other comments?
It looks like Daniel has his hand up.
Oh, please.
Oh, that's Dan. Hey, Dan. I know Dan. Are you down the hill?
No, I'm just at San Antonio.
Ah, well, down the hill. Everything's down the hill from here.
I just wanted to thank you for the insight about looking past what the eyes see, and realizing that, as the Course says, there's really only one thing that's ever happening, and that's a very powerful insight. And I think it's you put it very, very well. And if we can look past through what we seem to be seeing, if we're willing to do that, we're really in our function. That's our function. Yes.
Thank you, brother. Good to see you.
You too.
I don't see you enough.
Well, we can fix that.
We've been talking about going to have a beer for a while, so we need to do that.
It's true.
Any final comments? Anybody here want to say anything?
Tina? Please, Tina.
What made me think of, I was raised in the St. Francis church too up north, but what I want to say about that though is your talk tonight, I love European history, and the people that you spoke about, including St. Francis, when I think that I have it so bad in 2025, and that it's hard to love now. If I can put myself in their shoes then, as we are all one, I have it easy today compared to what they went through, and yet they still loved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even compare. And so that tells me that, I hate to say this, but it's all good in the hood. No matter what is going on, it's still all good. Even in my little perception doesn't see it. I'm just learning this stuff. So I just think that's amazing, and I also want to share something fun. I love that you said you had a game that you played when you would grab someone by the hand. And I play with Holy Spirit or oneness when I drive. And I'm like, okay, I don't know where I'm going. And I don't put GPS on. And I'm like, okay, get me home. And I didn't even know. That stuff is so fun. Anyway, super fun. You were great.
Oh, thank you, Tina. So this is Jai. We're in his beautiful house, and he's also the owner of the beautiful community a few doors down. So what would you like to say?
Well, I just want to thank Brother James for bringing me to Ajijic about 7.5 years ago. And after that, I founded Awakening Heart Sangha, and 4 of our residents now are in the MPP program with Awakening Together. And Michelle Hajnaki is here right now as our visiting minister. So I love the connection between Namaste Village, Awakening Together, and Awakening Heart Sangha. And I'm grateful for both James and for Regina for what y'all are doing. And it's an honor to be associated with both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jai.
And thank you, because we took that workshop together, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
With Anne, yes.
Yes. Loved it.
I love the oneness with all the groups.
Mhm.
So with that, we'll say namaste to all of you. It's been such a gift, such a pleasure. Now go out and live it. It's really very simple, as the song said. Just keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Thank you. And remember, all is well.
All is well.
Thank you so much.
Blessings to all of you. Namaste.
Thank you for watching our satsang. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to join us live, please remember you can do so by visiting our website at awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary. Again, our website is awakening-together.org. Remember to click the bell for more notifications and subscribe.